Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Jorge Santos. I head the product management team for the Eikon and user framework in Thomson Reuters. And today we're here to share with you this new exciting API that we have just released that we call the Eikon Data API. The agenda for today will be as follows. We will cover first what is this new Eikon Data API, what is new about it, and who is it for. We will of course cover how to get hold of this API, how to install it in your machine. We will cover some security aspects. What is an application ID, how to generate one, and how to use it within your code. We will then move to some Python examples using this new API. That should give you a better idea of how can this API help you in your daily tasks. We'll cover some examples like symbolic conversion, retrieving some news, getting some time series, as well as some reference data. And finally, we'll cover some aspects around support, where to go in case you require help in the future. Perfect, so let's get started. So first we will talk about what is this new Eikon Data API. So this is, in reality, it is an evolution of the existing data APIs that we have had for many years now. But this is a new web-based API that is meant to provide you a simple programmatic access to all the Thomson Reuters data and analytics that we provide within your desktop environment. This is an API that is intended for Eikon users, which are desktop users under a desktop license. It means that it's meant to be used for personal use and not for redistribution of data. We have other products for that in case you are interested. Now, why do we want to have this version of API, web API? Okay? So our goal was to really simplify the integration with almost any client technology. Okay? So we can just cover traditional managed environments like Java.NET, but we can also cover cases on the most modern set of languages, for example, like Python, R, Julia, etc. Okay? So that is the intention of this new API, to be really agnostic to the client environment that is being used and to comply with modern standards like it is in the case of a web API. Okay? In addition to this API, we have also developed a Python wrapper in order to facilitate access and interaction with this new data API. This wrapper was built in a form that is compatible with most common libraries in the Python ecosystem for data analysis. For example, in this wrapper, like all the results that come back from the Thomson Reuters backend, all the data that you retrieve, comes in a data frame or a pandas series, so it's ready to be used within pandas workflows. Also, we have a high level of integration with that Python notebook, so you can render some, for example, news. We can deliver them in an HTML form that can be very nicely rendered in your notebook. Right? So the intention is that you can just start integrating with your common libraries straight away out from the box. All of this may become clearer once we start playing around with the API ourselves. Right? So let's move on to that. Okay? So let's see, how is it that we can get hold of this API? How is it that we can install it in our machines and start playing around with it? Yeah? The installation itself is a two-step process. The first one is downloading and installing the API proxy itself. This proxy is a piece of software that gets installed in your machine that allows you to get access to the Thomson Reuters backend, which is where you're going to be retrieving all the data from. It's going to allow you to provide your login details, or Eikon login details, so you can access, as well as give you an access point to some UIs that you may require. If you're intending to use the API in its pure raw form or in another environment that is not Python, then this is all you require. However, if you're intending to use this in a Python environment, then as we mentioned before, you can also download the wrapper itself. That is going to make your life a lot easier. That is the second step, that is installing the Python library. Okay. So starting on the first point, here's the URL where you can get the API proxy from. That is developers.thomsonreuters.com. That's the full URL. We're going to do this in a minute now. And there's also a QR code in case you want to save it or take a picture of it in case you want to download this after. Okay. So let's try this and install the proxy and the library ourselves. So we're going to open a Chrome window first, and as we mentioned before, you go to developers.thomsonreuters.com. That gives you this very nice developers portal that we have. you need to have a login created, so you need to log in first. In this case, I'm already logged in. If not, you can just create an account yourself. So here we're going to go first. You can go to the URL we gave you before straight away. Takes you to the downloads page. Or here I can just go APIs by product, and I can see Eikon in here. I go to Eikon APIs. And there we have all the Eikon APIs. We have APIs on this family. We have all the legacy ones, the ones that we have had for some years now, all the COM APIs and .NET APIs. And here we have the one that we're covering today, the Eikon Web and Scripting APIs. It mentions that it's on beta, so this product is on beta right now, which means that we would appreciate if you can send any feedback, and we may change some of these items given that feedback until it is fully released, hopefully very soon. So I'm going here inside this right now, and there's a description of the API. There's a quick start that allows you to, it tells you all the steps you need to install this product. And here I'm going to go straight to the downloads page. Okay? If I go to downloads, I have here two different versions, which is the Windows one, and we cover Mac right now, which is a great feature of this API. You can use it straight from Mac without having to use any virtual environment. You can just in your Mac download the software, use your Eikon credentials, and start using the API straight from here. Right? This is the version that I'm going to use, given that I'm on a Mac right now. So I'm just gonna press download in here. If it is the first time that you do this, you will be asked to fill in some form with some details. In this case, I've done that previously, so it may not ask me for that. So I'm just going to click download, and then my download starts. Right? So I'm just going to fast forward until this is downloaded. So this has now finished downloading. We have it here at bottom. So we just click on the download. It opens my downloads folder. I have a Mac installer, a DMG file. So we open this one. And the only thing that we need to do is this icon. We just drag it into my applications folder. And that's all you need. It's now installed. And the process for installing the Windows version should be very similar, a typical Windows installer. So now here that this is installed, I can just go to my Finder. I can just look for API. I can see Eikon API proxy here as an app. I just open this one. And this is going to display a very common screen that we have seen on Eikon before, which is a login screen. Just provide your login details. So Thomson Reuters, com, and my password, my Eikon password in here. And I press sign in. And that's it. My proxy is now running. Right? I'll go to the UI in a bit. But once that we're on the installing process, let's just install the Python library now as well. Again, if you were to run any other language that is not Python, then you can just start using straight away the proxy. It will come clear after what I mean with that. But since we're going to be using some Python examples, we want to install the Python libraries as well. So for that, I'm just going to open a terminal window, which I just have here. I'm just going to make my font a bit bigger so you can see it. And I'm just going to run a simple pip install Eikon. And this should install Eikon with no problem in your directory. Right? If you don't have pip, then you can access this from the developer's site as well. There's a Git repository that you can access and clone the repo and install the files. Right? Okay, so let's start moving on into how to start using our Eikon proxy. So we are now both installed. We can see here our API proxy. This needs to be running every time that we want to be retrieving data. So you have to be logged in, and this UI needs to be displayed. Well, not displayed, but it has to be loaded every time you want to load data. Otherwise, you won't be able to do so. Here, the proxy just gives you some basic information, gives you some local URL that is being utilized to access data. There's a proxy that is being created on your machine. There are some links at the bottom that we will go through them throughout this presentation. Right? So let's start using some Python notebooks to start accessing data. Right? So we just gonna go here to a different folder. I'm gonna go here to Eikon, a folder that I had created before, and we're gonna launch a Jupyter notebook. Right, so I have here my browser, and let's start with the first application. So let's start creating our first Python notebook. So we have opened this notebook. It's a blank notebook. In this case, I'm using Python 2, but the library supports both Python 2 and Python 3. So the first thing we always have to do is import the library. Okay, so I'm just calling Eikon as EK. So let's say, for example, that we want to retrieve some data, right? So even though we're going to go into a bit more detail, let's say that we want to do get data, and I want to get some data for IBM, and I want to retrieve some revenue data. Okay. Right now, it will give me this error that says app ID is missing. Okay. So let's talk about app ID. App ID is a very important part of the API. We use it for security and for you. So you as a developer can control your applications. So first, an application is any piece of code or script that you write that is going to be retrieving data. That's what we refer to as an application. Yeah? So an app ID allows you and ourselves to identify any app, so you can always enable that application in case you want to distribute that app or someone else is using that application. You can just suppress access to that app or do some version control with that. So the way to generate one app ID is that if you go back to your proxy, if you go to the proxy here, there's a link here at the bottom that says get an app ID. Okay? So if I click on this one, you will see this UI that comes up that says Thomson Reuters Eikon API proxy app ID generator. And here the only thing you have to do is that you need to give your application a name. For example, we can say here webinar Python. I'm going to generate a new application ID. This comes at the top. Okay. Here we see that the status is enabled. We can disable that one, or we could change the name from here as well, in case we want to do so. And it has some ownership details. The only thing you have to do is you select this ID, and then you just copy it. Then go back to your code, and you do EK set app ID. We paste that ID. And after that, we should be able to retrieve data straight away, right? So the first thing we have to always do is to set an app ID, and it's highly advisable that we do this for every single application or script that we run, so we can have full control of our applications and the data that is being retrieved. Let's go now for our first example of the Python API. So we're going to open this symbology notebook. Already has our imports. I'm gonna already set previously an app ID. So let's talk about symbology. Symbology is a very common task that we have to face on a day-to-day basis, where we have a bunch of files or code or spreadsheets that have a given symbology, and we need to translate it to something else so we can retrieve data or identify it or index in a given form. Right? So let's say, for example, that we have a list of CDOs that I have already put in here. So I have an array of CDOs. Okay, so I can see all my CDOs that I have. And let's say that I want to convert these CDOs into ISINs and rigs. Right? So I can get EK, and then I can just see the list of functions that I have. So we're gonna get symbology. Okay, and I can see here all my docstring. Okay, just give me all the parameters that I need to use for symbology. So let's do that one, and so let's say that we want to convert our CDOs, which is an array. Again, it can be a single symbol or it can be multiple ones in an array form. So I want to convert all my CDOs array into, say we want to transfer into, and again I'm going to create an array because I want to get multiple outputs. As I want to do ISINs, and I want to also return rigs. Right? So I run that one, and it just returns back our first data retrieval. As we mentioned before, the library itself is ready to interact with other common libraries. In this case, it's returning a pandas data frame. Okay, so if I look at that one, it is a pandas data frame that I'm using. So it's just very easy to interact with things you already know how to use. Right? So here on my pandas data frame that it comes, I have all my icons, my rigs, and it also comes with the primary rig in case it's not the same one that I'm using in here, right? So let's do some other examples. Also, if you want to get a specific one, you can say, for example, get symbology, and I want to do from, let's say, Thomson Reuters, and I want to translate into, let's say, CIDO now, right? So let's do the way around. So I can say from here, my CIDO, copy that one. I can say Eikon, get symbology, and I want to do this item here, this CIDO that I have, and I'm going to do from, I want to specify that this is a CIDO itself, and we're going to translate this into a perm ID, which is the Thomson Reuters open symbology that allows you to do relationship across a big set of assets. So I can do here from this item to, let's say, an organization perm ID, right? And there I have it here. So basically we can convert any set of symbols from and to CIDOs, rigs, QSIPs, tickers, Lipper IDs, etc. Okay. Now let's do a bit of news. As we know, Thomson Reuters is one of the main sources of news, so of course we want to offer access, give you access to this news through this API. So let's try news now. So let's just again import the library itself. I already preset my app ID. So if I go to EK and just display those ones, there are two functions for news. One is get new headline, and the other one is get new story. Then they're quite descriptive. I mean, just the first one is going to get you a set of headlines. So if I just run that one without any parameters, I can see the top news coming up right now. So it's sorted in chronological order. So it's just the ones that are happening right now. And this is count of the top 10. You can change that count as well with a parameter, but that is the top 10 that we're seeing right now with the timestamp and the subject of that one. There's a link for the news story and the source of that story itself, right? So here we can see all the set of parameters. So specific query, the default one is again the top items in English with a count of 10, the ones that we want to get. We can specify we want to get from a specific date to a given date as well. So let's try this set of headlines. Let's say that we want to get for a specific rig, right? Let's say, for example, I want to get news headlines for the rig Google. Right? So it's all the headlines for Google right now. As we have seen before, this is a data frame, it's a pandas data frame that you can start using straight away. So you can just get, for example, just the text. This is a data frame. Right, so I can do only see the text, right? I have all the text in here, right? That's serious now. Right, but how is it that you can know all these different codes, right? Because it's a very extensive set of filters that you can use. It's like a full query language that you can specify to get the news that you're looking for and do some text analytics, okay? You actually already have access to this language or this syntax. If you go to Eikon, either Eikon Desktop or Eikon Web, which is what I'm going to use right now, so I'm going to go straight to Eikon Web. So here's Eikon Web, and if I go to my Helios and then I open my news monitor, then I here have a news monitor with all the news that are coming now. If you go to the top, you'll see that there's this search box where you can start typing. This actually is a very useful help for you to construct those queries. So I can look, for example, let's say that I'm looking for FTSE, so I can see all the list of items that match, and they're categorized. In this case, it's the top item, organizations, indices, and so on. So let's select FTSE. So I want to look for news that are regarding FTSE, and I'm also looking for Brexit. So top Brexit referendum and its consequences. So I'm going to use this as a subject itself. So we can see now this one creates an AND. Okay, this can be changed, this logic. Let's just leave it as an AND. And we also want to use everything that is only in English, right? So I'm going to say English in here and language English. So it just filters only those ones here. So if you just get your mouse and pass it over, you'll see the syntax that is required for that. So I can just copy this text. And then we go back to our news. So we're going to enter here, let's say ek.get news headlines, and let's paste that text we just copied from there. And we just press enter, and we can see here the data frame that comes back with the top 10 news for Brexit and FTSE as it was displayed on a monitor here. Okay, so this is the way that you can get all these different syntax to get your filters on all your news, right? On your news analytics that you can just get. Right? And we can see here as well. You can see if we want to see only the text for those ones. This is all the text that is coming back for those items, right? So that gives us the headlines. Now let's say that we want to actually look at the story itself, right? So as you can see, every single row item in this data frame comes back with a story ID, which is what you require to see the story itself, right? So let's say that we want to see the first one. So we just copy this code in here that we have. There's more things that you can see from the story itself. So it's going to copy the story ID. Then we go in here and then we say ek dot get news story. Now we're going to use the second one. We're going to paste this item that we just copied, this story ID, and now we retrieved the full story displaying here, right? So what is it that we're looking at? We're actually looking at an HTML version or code of this news story itself. As we mentioned before, the wrapper, the Python wrapper, has a very high integration with other tools, in this case with IPython Notebook. So this one we can say we want to render the text itself. There's a very nice way of doing that. So let's say that we want to say from let's say IPython display, import display and HTML, right? So we're importing that from IPython libraries, and then here we're going to say display this code. So let's see what happens. It's going to retrieve the story, but now it's rendered in a very nice HTML form that includes all the links to other stories. It includes images, it includes different formatting. It's a pretty cool way that you can just render those stories and see those items. But at the same time, you don't need to display it on HTML. If you want to do some text analytics and go through the story itself, you can do it like that, right? So again, it's a very extensive set of possibilities in terms of news. You can retrieve all the news headlines, you can retrieve a set of stories, and you can render on multiple forms within your IPython notebook, or if you want just to go through the text, you can do the same thing, right? Okay, so this was for news. Now let's move on to the next topic. Time series. So I don't think we can call this a serious financial API if we don't cover time series. Of course, that this is included on this API. So let's start seeing what is available within time series, right? So we cover all different kind of asset classes. As long as we have a price history for this instrument, you should be able to access this instrument through this API. Okay? So let's do our import, already like set up ID before. So let's do now, if I do Eikon and then we get time series. Okay, so time series is going to allow me to get data in multiple intervals. It can be like daily, weekly, monthly, or also to upsampling this, for example, can be like tick data that we can get with this one. So I can say, for example, I want to get data for Amazon, right? And let's choose the default parameters, which is a daily data for 1 year. So if we just do this one, then we can start seeing our data frame that comes back. It is automatically laid out in a way that makes sense depending on the data you're retrieving. In this case, I have all my fields going across, all my pricing fields, and it's all indexed by the dates. Okay, so I have, in this case, have open, high, low, close, account, and volume. For these days, this is because we didn't specify any field. Okay, so we can say at the same time, let's, for example, do here, let's say I can get time series, and let's do this for Microsoft, right? msft.o, and then now specify a set of fields. So we're gonna use get closing data, and let's precise some start date, which we want to use from 2015, let's say 06/23, and let's do some end date. We're going to do 2 years of data, so 2017, 06/23. The dates you can either use on a string format, as I'm doing now, or you can pass date-time parameters as well. So let's get this one, see what it gets back. So we have all the close values. It looks super fast. 2 years of data, of daily data. So I can just put this in, let's save it as a data frame. And of course, again, making emphasis that is extremely integrated with existing libraries. You could be using, for example, matplotlib if you want to charge this data, given that it's on a data frame. In this case, I'm going to use a library, and that is called Govlength, that is based on Plotly, which is another excellent plotting library that I use. So, but it can be any other one. You can use Bokeh or any other ones that you may want to use for plotting, right? So I said Microsoft, and I may want to plot this item that I just got here, right? So I can see this chart from Microsoft that we just retrieved right now. So we may want to say, for example, I want to do this one is, well, it's a line chart, right? I want to do like here some color, say like blue, and we want to best fit this data, right? So this should give us a best fitted chart that we have here of Microsoft, right? So you can see the 2 years of data, of daily data. So that is daily. What if we want to get some tick data? Okay, so let's just hide this output so we can just see more screen. And let's say, for example, that we want to get let's change the asset class. Let's say we want to get here time series, and we want to get 4 GBP. We want to get an interval. We want to get here tick data, right? So let's see what comes back. So here all tick data for GBP. So we can hear the precision timestamps that we have for all of them. Okay, so let's call, for example, we can say, let's call this one say GBP, right? So you can hear how the whole set of data looks like. Okay, here we have all the multiple ticks for GBP, right? So again, a super fast API that we can use to retrieve data. Okay, let's do something else. We can also start getting not only a single set of securities, but you can start getting multiple ones. So let's say, for example, that we want to get, let's say we're gonna get time series, right? We want to do this in an array format. Let's do this for Microsoft, right? And we also want to do for the SPX index. Let's do a comparison of the two. Okay, we only want to get close, so let's do here close, and we want to get this. Let's do it for the start date. Let's do again set 2015 and say 06/23, and let's do end date the same thing. Let's do 2017 06/23, right? So that should give us, if we call this one, let's call it performance. Let's do a comparison perf, right? So that one, if we do this, we can see the head of that one. We have now, if you remember, it changes and it displays the data in the best format, right? So we have all the multiples securities along the top, right? All in display the date, so we can just start comparing both of them, right? So we wanted to see these two items, right? So I can just plot the two of them so we can see them. So again, given the two different values, it just looks very different. But let's say that we want to normalize it and actually do some spread analysis, right? So let's say that we want to normalize this data, and let's say that we want to plot it, and we want to do some spread analysis, right? So we can do here kind of spread that we want to do. Let's add a title here, and we can say here Microsoft versus the SPX. Okay, let's do a bit of waterline. Okay, and let's just hide the grid. Okay? So with that, and we can see here, as per analysis, we can see how, for example, Microsoft has outperformed the SPX on the last 2 years from that starting date. Right? So it's some example of how you can start using and retrieving multiple securities at once. Right? Let's do one last example so we can see some candlestick patterns. So we can say open, high, low, and close. So going back to our first example of Amazon, right? So we're going to do this. We're going to get now, let's say Amazon, and we're going to do again get time series data, right? And we're going to do this for Amazon with all the default values, right? So I can see here Amazon, and it has high, close, low, open, count, and volume. Okay, so we're going to start creating what we call, let's say, a quant figure, right? So let's say, so we can just create quant figure. We just expand this one, and let's say that we're going to do it for Amazon, and let's just hide the legend. Let's give it a title. Let's say here, let's say Amazon, right? And we're going to add some volume after that, right? And we're just going to plot this item, right? So here we can see all open, high, low, close, all the candlesticks that we have, adding volume for Amazon, right? So basically we have seen that this Python library can retrieve any price series that you want in multiple interval formats. You have from weekly, dailies, monthlies, to yearlies, to all the way to tick data. And you can do it for all the depth of data that you're allowed to get with your license. And you can just interact with other and integrate it with other Python libraries, either being pandas or any charting libraries, so you can just start getting more value from your Python coding and exploratory things. Great, so let's move on to the next subject, that is reference data. Let's take a look now to the last example that we're going to do, that is regarding reference data. So think of reference data as everything that is not a time series. Can be like any point values, any grid data, fundamentals, estimates, descriptive data. So we're also going to cover that on this API. So let's do some examples. So let's do our common imports that we have. So into Eikon, and there's this function that is called getData, right? This is extremely powerful function that basically can get you almost all the data that you can see across Eikon for point values. So let's say, for example, that we want to get data for Microsoft, right? And we want to get the revenue itself, right? So if I do that, you'll notice to start with two things, right? The way that it comes back, it comes in a form of a tuple that we're seeing. That is because if you retrieve a lot of data, there could be some errors inside the data and you don't want to fail the whole request. So in that case, we separate those ones. So the easiest thing to do is always, you can unpack this tuple by just doing data frame, comma, errors. So we know that everything that is in the data frame will go as a data frame itself, right? So we can see this value. So that is the first thing to notice. So we have here my rig and I have my field, right? Now, how is it that you can know which fields to use? Okay, that is another extremely cool thing that the API has, is that if we go to our Eikon proxy at the top, so if I go back and open my Eikon proxy that I had open before, which is always running on the background, you notice this second link that says data item browser, right? So we click on that. This is the same data item browser that exists within Eikon Desktop or Eikon Web, where you can just type any field name. For example, like I'm looking for, let's say, revenue in this case. So it comes back with all the multiple data items that belong to that. If I'm looking, for example, for company name, okay, I see all of those ones. If I'm looking for, let's say, returns, I can do that as well, right? It's super fast, and something that is really useful as well is that you can add an instrument. Let's say if you want to corroborate or you want to verify that is the right data item you're looking for. Let's say that I want to add here, and I want to add this for Microsoft. It gives me a nice to suggest. So I'm selecting this company, and it gives me all the values, so I can just see if this is the right value that I require or not. I have a description of the field and tells me the parameters in which it comes valued. But also something that we can do is if you click on the top right where it says parameters, you can see all the multiple parameters that this data item accepts, right? So let's say that I want to get revenue, but I don't want to get it for this fiscal year. I want to get it for, let's say, 3 fiscal years ago. So the current one minus 3. So I change this value in here. And let's say that we may want to get it in a different currency, right? So let's say that we want to get it in euros. Okay. So as we're selecting these items, you'll notice on the top, on the bottom right, that this expression is being created, this string, okay? So everything on getData within the Python API can be retrieved in a string format. So if I copy this one and I go back here, I can paste this straight away in here and start using that. That is going to save you a lot of time, right? And you'll notice that the syntax is exactly the same as we use on Excel, right? So if you use Eikon in Excel, the way you write your TR formulas, it is exactly the same syntax that you require for getData, right? So I'm doing this one, and now I and I can see now my revenue is in euros as of 3 fiscal years ago, right? You can pass, of course, any number of data items, right, as long as they're in an array format, as well as multiple securities or universes. You can refer to a list, a monitor that you have created, a portfolio. So you can just pass those names, or you can even state a chain. For example, let's say that we want to get the revenue, but we want to do this for all the items in the FTSE itself, right? So you can just pass it as a chain instead. Okay, let's just change this one. Sorry, it's FTSE, have it here. So we just save this one, and now we can see that the same item came back for every single member of the FTSE, right? So you have all of these ones in here. Right? So again, it's pretty easy. We can do it for multi-security, multi-field. We want to see it on that form, right? Let's say that we just want to get, let's say that we change this one to be a total return. So we also do analytics. Okay, so let's say we want to get total return for 1 month for all the FTSE members. Okay, so we can see now this one, the 1 month return. Okay, going back, we can just plot these ones if we want. So the way that it comes back, if you can see, the instrument is part of the columns. So we can just change that. We can say let's set index instrument in here, and we want to quickly just plot this one in bar form, right? So we can see all the returns, multiple 1 month returns of the different members of the index, right? So let's say, for example, that we want to start combining what we have learned so far about the Python API, and let's use some Panda functionality. So let's start using some a bit more advanced. Let me just copy to save some time. So let's look at the Euro stocks. So let's say that we want to look at the Euro stocks, and we want to get some descriptive data, which is like the country code and the economy sector, as well as some analytic data, as like the 1 month return here at the bottom. So we retrieve this data, and we can see now how this comes back. So we're seeing all the instruments, the country, the sector, and the return, right? So now let's start using some a bit more Panda's native functionality to see how we can leverage this Python API and do things super quickly ourselves. So let's say that we want to create a group that is going to be from this data frame that we have. We're going to group it by, and let's do 2 hierarchies. So first let's do it by the country itself. Let's just copy this column name. We're then going to do it by the economic sector. So let's copy that. So that is going to be our group. Okay. And now we're going to create, let's see how this is just a group in one. So let's just create a matrix in which we're going to get our group itself, and we're going to get the mean values. So we just aggregate all the mean returns for each of the sectors and country codes that we have. Right? And this looks like this, right? Multiple sectors, and we have the meaning here. Let's say that we want to get this value, but let's just unstack it a bit so we can use it. So let's just unstack all the values, and let's say that we want to get this one here, right? So just let's redo it here, right? So we can here and see how it looks, right? So we have a full matrix with all the sectors, all the countries going like that. And if we want to visualize this in a better form, let's say that we want to just plot this one, and let's say that we want to use some kind, let's say heat map, this case, and let's use a bit of color scale, then it's going to be, let's say, red, yellow, and green. And here we can see a nice heat map of all the multiple means of 1 month return for all the members of the stocks 500. We have all the multiple sectors and all the country codes at the bottom, right? So it's just a very easy, with 5 lines, we can retrieve all the data that we have for all these hundreds of members of this index, and just do analytics, either being by the backend on Thomson Reuters or the ones that you want to do on your Python notebook, right? So it's one of the examples of all the really cool things you can do with Get Data. So basically we combine this with the data item browser. It's a super powerful tool, so you can just get almost all data that you can see and use in Excel, and the ones you see across Eikon. Okay? So what to do in case that you require help, have any questions, or need some advice on how to use this API? So the best way to do that, and the quickest one, is if you go back to the developers portal, the one that we saw before, developers.thomsonreuters.com, and if you go back to the same Eikon web and scripting API sections that we have, this is where we downloaded at the beginning our software. You'll see on the right hand side next to tutorials there's also Q&A. If you click on this one, you can see the full form that we have in here, and we have a set of a team that is always looking at these items, and we have a growing community, so we can just share this any information that we may have or just answer your questions. This is the same form. If you're watching this seminar and you go through the Q&A session later, you will see that here's where we're going to be answering all these questions you may have, right? But it's always available for you, so you can contact the support team for all these APIs, these or any other APIs. And that will be all for me today. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that at least you were able to get a grasp of all the great things that you can do with this API. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate on reaching out to us. And same way, if you have any feedback, we always like to work with the community and to work together with you to build these great APIs. Okay? Thank you very much.